My name is Margaret Hayes, and at 72 years old, I thought I'd seen everything life had to offer.
I was wrong. The weekend had been beautiful.
My son Robert married his sweetheart Emily in a ceremony by the ocean.
As mother of the groom, I'd spent months helping with preparations, and honestly, I was exhausted.
So when it was over, I decided to stay at our family's beach house for a few extra days, just to rest and breathe in the salt air. My apartment back in the city could wait.
Also, I thought .it was 5 in the morning when my phone rang. The sound
Cut through the peaceful darkness like a knife.
The security guard from my building, Marcus, was on the line.
His voice was apologetic but firm. Mrs.
Hayes, I'm very sorry to wake you, but there's a situation here.
Your daughter-in-law is at your apartment with several men in a moving truck. She says she's the new owner and she's taking the furniture. My daughter-in-law.
My heart stopped. Not Emily, my son's new bride.
No, this was Linda,
My former daughter-in-law.
Robert's first wife. I sat up in bed, my mind racing through the years. Linda and Robert had divorced 5 years ago.
It had been painful for everyone, especially for Robert. She'd left him for another man, someone with more money, more status.
She'd broken my son's heart into pieces so small. I wasn't sure they'd ever fit back together, but they had. Slowly, carefully, Robert had healed. And then he'd met Emily, a kind kindergarten teacher with a gentle soul and a beautiful laugh.
Watching them fall in love had been like watching spring return after a brutal winter, Mrs.
Hayes?
What would you like me to do? Marcus asked. I could hear voices in the background.
Linda's voice, actually?
Sharp and demanding, just as I remembered. A strange calm settled over me. Maybe it was the ocean air, or maybe it was simply that I'd lived long enough to know that sometimes the universe gives you exactly the moment you've been preparing for without even knowing it. Marcus, I said quietly, don't stop.
Let her in.
Let her take whatever she wants. There was a pause. Ma'am, are you sure?
I'm absolutely sure.
In fact, tell her I said she's about to find a surprise. A wonderful surprise. I could hear the confusion in his voice, but Marcus was professional.
Yes, ma'am. I'll let her proceed. I hung up the phone and lay back on my pillow, a smile spreading across my face. Let me tell you about that apartment. 20 years ago, when my late husband Thomas was still alive, we'd bought that property as an investment.
It was in a good neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but solid.
We'd rented it out for years. Then, when Thomas passed away 10 years ago, I'd moved in myself.
It was easier than our big family home. More manageable for a woman alone. But here's what Linda didn't know. 3 years ago, when Robert and Emily started getting serious, I'd made a decision.
I'd called my lawyer and transferred the deed of that apartment to Robert.
It was my gift to him, though I'd asked him to keep it quiet. I didn't want any fuss.
I continued living there, paying him modest rent, though he'd insisted I didn't need to pay anything at all. The apartment was his.
Legally, completely his. And 2 months ago, when Robert and Emily got engaged, my son had done something that made my heart swell with pride. He transferred that same apartment to Emily as an engagement gift. He wanted her to have security, property in her own name, something that was entirely hers. That apartment Linda was currently emptying. It belonged to Emily, my son's new wife.
I lay there in the beach house, imagining the scene. Linda, so confident in whatever scheme she'd concocted, probably with forged documents or some elaborate con. She'd always been cunning.
She'd probably spent weeks planning this, thinking she'd found the perfect moment while I was away, vulnerable and alone after the wedding. She had no idea. I couldn't go back to sleep, of course. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the beach house porch, watching the sunrise over the Atlantic. The sky turned from deep purple to pink to gold, and I thought about all the turns life takes. Linda had hurt my son deeply. When she'd left him, Robert had been 35 years old, successful in his career as an architect, but emotionally devastated. He'd loved her completely. He'd trusted her with everything. The divorce had been ugly. She tried to take more than her share, claiming she'd sacrificed her career for his. In truth, she'd never wanted to work. She'd wanted the lifestyle, the status, the appearance of success. When someone richer came along, she'd jumped ship without looking back. I'd watched my son rebuild himself piece by piece. I'd held him while he cried, listened while he questioned everything about himself, reassured him that her betrayal was about her character, not his worth. And then Emily had come into his life like sunshine after a storm. Emily taught 5-year-olds. She made a modest salary and didn't care about expensive things. She loved Robert for exactly who he was. A good man with a kind heart and a beautiful mind. She made him laugh again. She made him believe in love again. Their wedding had been
simple and perfect. No pretense, no showing off. Just two people promising to build a life together, surrounded by people who loved them. And now, on their honeymoon in Hawaii, Linda was trying to steal from them. My phone rang again around 7:30.
Marcus, sounding worried. Mrs.
Hayes, they've taken quite a lot.
Are you certain about this? Completely certain, Marcus. Is she still there? No, ma'am. She left about 20 minutes ago. Very pleased with herself, I might add. I can imagine. Thank you, Marcus. You did exactly right.
I called Robert next, but it went to voicemail.
He and Emily were probably still asleep in their hotel. I left a message. Sweetheart, it's MOM. Nothing to worry about. But when you wake up, please call me. There's been an interesting development. With the apartment, everything is fine. Better than fine, actually. Enjoy your breakfast.
Love you both. Then I called my lawyer, Richard Churn, who'd been handling my affairs for 30 years. Richard, I need you to do something for me.
Today, of course, Margaret. What's going on?
I explained the situation. Richard was quiet for a moment. Then I heard something I'd rarely heard from him. Laughter. She removed property from someone else's apartment. Property that belongs to them. Every stick of furniture I owned.
Every painting. Every
lamp. Every book. Margaret, you know this is theft. Clear, prosecutable theft. I do know that, Richard.
What would you like me to do? I'd like you to call Linda and explain the situation.
Explain that she's stolen property belonging to Emily Hayes. Give her 24 hours to return everything, completely undamaged, or we'll file
criminal charges and a civil suit. With pleasure, Richard said. Absolute pleasure. Robert called me back 2 hours later. I could hear the ocean in the background and Emily's voice asking if everything was okay. MOM, what happened? Your message was cryptic. I told him everything.
The early morning call. Linda's attempted heist. My instructions to Marcus. There was silence on the line. Then Robert's voice, thick with emotion. You let her take everything?
Everything, I confirmed. Every single thing, because you knew.
Because I knew the apartment is Emily's.
And everything in it belongs to me, which means Linda just committed theft. Very obvious, very provable theft. Another silence. Then I heard Emily's voice, clearer now.
Robert must have put me
on speaker. Margaret, did you really do that? Hello, darling.
Yes, I really did. Consider it my wedding gift. The pleasure of watching Linda realize exactly what she's done. Emily laughed. A sound like wind chimes. That's the most beautifully kind revenge I've ever heard of. It's not revenge, sweetie. It's justice. And also a lesson.
Some people spend their lives taking.
Eventually, they take something they have no right to, and consequences catch up with them. Richard called Linda that afternoon.
He called
me afterward, still chuckling. She denied everything at first.
Said she had no idea what I was talking about.
Then I told her we have security footage, Marcus's testimony, and a detailed inventory of everything she removed.
The silence was extraordinary, and then
she claimed you'd given her permission. I explained that even if you had, which you obviously didn't, you don't own the property or its contents to give permission. I told her she has 24 hours. Do you think she'll comply? I think she's consulting with whatever lawyer will take her call, and being told she doesn't have a leg to stand on.
Yes, I think she'll comply.
The alternative is criminal charges and the public humiliation she can't afford. He was right. By the next evening, everything was back.
Marcus supervised the return delivery himself.
Linda didn't come personally.
She sent the same movers who looked embarrassed and apologetic. Everything's here, Mrs. Hayes, Marcus reported. I checked against the list. Even the silver candlesticks are back. Thank you, Marcus.
I'll be home in a few days. When Robert and Emily returned from their honeymoon, we all met at the apartment.
Emily walked through slowly, touching her furniture, her paintings, her books. It all feels different now, she said softly, like it's really mine.
Does that make sense?
Perfect sense, I said.
Sometimes we don't value what
we have until someone tries to take it. Robert put his arm around his new wife.
Linda sent a text. She's threatening to sue for something. She wasn't clear what. Let her try, I said calmly. She committed a crime. She's
lucky we're not pressing charges.
Richard made that very clear to her lawyer. We sat together in the living room, the three of us, drinking tea and eating the cookies I'd brought from the beach house. Can I ask you something, Margaret?
Emily said.
Why didn't you just tell the guard to stop her immediately?
Why let her take everything?
I thought about that question.
Because stopping her would have prevented a crime, but it wouldn't have taught her anything.
Linda has spent her life getting away with things through charm and manipulation.
She needed to learn that actions have consequences. She needed to commit fully to her bad decision and then face what came next. That's very wise, Emily said. That's very you, Mom, Robert added, smiling at me with such love that my heart squeezed. I'm old enough to know that revenge that harms someone is poison. But justice, real justice, can be medicine.
Linda needed to feel the full weight of what she was trying to do.
And honestly, I needed her to reveal herself completely. This way, there's no ambiguity.
She showed exactly who she is. We talked until evening, about the wedding, about their
honeymoon, about their plans for the future.
Robert mentioned they were thinking of starting a family soon. This apartment will be perfect for a baby, Emily said, looking around with soft eyes.
Thank you, Margaret, for everything, for raising such a good man,
for welcoming me,
for protecting what's ours. I hugged her close. You protect what's yours now, sweetheart. You're the owner. You're the one who decides what happens here. After they left, I stood at the window, looking out at the city lights. Thomas would have loved this story.
He always said that the best justice was the kind that taught instead of just punished. Linda never contacted any of us again.
I heard through mutual acquaintances that her new relationship had ended and she'd moved to another state.
I felt no satisfaction in that. Her life was her own to navigate. But I did feel satisfaction knowing she'd learned she couldn't manipulate or steal from my family. 6 months later, Emily told us she was pregnant. Robert called me crying happy tears. We're going to have a baby, Emma.
Can you believe it?
I could believe it. I could believe in love that heals, in fresh starts, in the beautiful persistence of goodness, even after betrayal. Life is long and full of surprises.
Some surprises are cruel, like Linda showing up to steal what wasn't hers.
But some surprises are magnificent, like watching your son fall in love again, like gaining a daughter who feels like a gift, like learning that kindness and justice can walk hand in hand. That morning at 5 a.m., when Marcus called, Linda thought she was taking advantage of an old woman alone at a beach house.
What she didn't understand was that I wasn't alone.
I was surrounded by love, by law, by the strength that comes from living 72 years. And learning when to fight and when to simply step aside and let someone's own actions teach them what they need to learn. The furniture is back where it belongs. My son is happy. His wife feels secure.
And somewhere, I hope, Linda is learning to build something honestly instead of trying to steal what others have built. That's not revenge. That's hope.
Hope that people can change, can learn, can become better than their worst moments. And if they can't, well, at least they can't steal from my family without consequences. That's enough for me.